Welcome to the Bill Cartwright Show with Steve Cohen. Our special guest today is a superstar in our sport, Chantal Sutherland. Chantal, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Bill.
You know, this is really amazing because my whole life is about playing sports and winning, but you have actually won, I don't know, hundreds of times more than I have. So it's really amazing to meet you. I'm just very, very pleased.
It's an honor to meet you, and honestly, meeting you and looking at your accolades and everything you've done is incredible. I lose percent of the time, so I'm a professional loser as much as I've won a lot of races too, but 1,100 races, something like that. But we lose a lot too, jockeys.
Well, let's talk a little bit, if you can. Talk a little bit about growing up. I think in Toronto. Talk about that.
I grew up in north of Toronto on a farm in Caledon, and my father was a horse owner. We had Irish chauffeurs, and we had ponies, cows. The odd time we had a couple goats, but for the most part, I worked there. I landscaped as a kid, and my dad was, the breeding facility, and I would gallop thoroughbreds, break horses from the gate, break babies, and because I'm small, they would take me to the sales, and I would take the horses in the sales ring to make the horse look bigger. So I've gone from the ground up, and then it's come full circle. So when I'm done racing, I'd really like to get into the bloodstock part of it.
Well, can you talk about that a little bit? Talk about what kind of gal you were like in high school, and then eventually maybe college. Talk about what kind of kid you were.
I really was playing field hockey, and I was downhill skiing. I went to boarding school, and the boarding school that I went to, we'd have days on Wednesday. So we'd, in the wintertime, downhill ski, and I loved to race downhill. I was on the team for skiing, and then in the summers, I played field hockey and kind of all year round. And I wanted to be in the Olympics, and so I played for Canada. I got up to the Junior World Cup team when I was in university, but then all of a sudden, all the girls grew, and I stayed the same height. Game got really fast, and I was kind of getting banged around. So I think my last year of college, I decided, I am small, and I felt like I was a good athlete, and I could ride horses. And I was in an occupational psychology class, and I was trying to help people with occupational psychology, like what occupation they should choose for their life. And I put all the ones for myself just to see, and jockey was the one that hit the sweet spot. So I didn't know if I could make any at it, but I took a chance, and I believed in myself, and I knew I could ride. I knew I was an athlete, and I knew I had the drive and determination. It's just, was I going to be good enough at it? And I went to the track, and it all worked out so far.
Hey, did you have somebody who mentored you through that to kind of guide you along that path?
Yeah, so when before I became a jockey, I went to a dinner party, and I told, one of the trainers I wanted to be a jockey, and they kind of laughed at me, and I didn't really know why. And they said, "Oh, you're too pretty to be a jockey, and you should be on TV, you should commentate." And I said, "Well, I really want to be a jockey." And they're like, "Well, you don't have it to be a jockey." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what it is you need to have to be a jockey. What would I need to do?" And they're like, "Well, someone like Angel Cordero, which would be like the Michael Jordan of basketball, would need to teach you, because like that's basically the only guy who could teach you how to have what you need to have." And I'm like, "Okay, well, where's he live?" And they said, he lives in Florida, Miami-Dade. So back then, you call 411 for information. And I called for all the Corderos in Miami-Dade, and they gave me 3. And I called Angel, and the first one that I called, Angel answered. And I said, "My name is Chantal Sutherland. I heard you help young jockeys become jockeys." And he said, "Yeah, I do." So where do you live? I said, "Canada." I said, "Well, I live in Florida." I said, "Well, I can get a plane ticket." He said, "All right." So I came down to Florida. I rode for Scotty Schuhofer. I trained with him for a year, went to Saratoga, and then went back to Canada and won 2 Sovereign Awards. And then the rest is history. I went all over the world racing.
Talk about what you felt like in your first race.
My first race, I felt like super nervous and not sure what to expect. But what I was blown away with was the quietness of the race when you break from the gate. And then the race is actually very quiet. It's not like you hear thundering hooves or like people talking. It's just really quiet, almost meditative, like a quiet space. And it's very exhilarating beyond anything that I could ever even explain. Just it's so exciting. And at that time, it happened super fast. But and then the dirt all around you, and changing your goggles was like, wow, oh my God, it's just so much going on. And now it's so natural.
Can you talk about your first big race and your first big win?
My first win was on a horse called Silver Bounty, and it was the first time in my life I felt like a horse just take off with you, and it was like driving through traffic when everyone's going half your speed, and just the force and the pull. Like, he was really, like, at that point in my career, I wasn't really helping him. He was just taking me, and I was hanging on. And then I would say now, at the level that I'm at now, the most exciting race was the race when I was in California, and I was on the horse called Game On Dude, and I was 50-1, the Pacific Classic, and no, Santa Anita Handicap, and I won. And when I went to the winner's circle, everybody booed. It was the first time I'd ever been booed in horse racing, and it's because I screwed up so many tickets, like, and then so that was interesting. But what an amazing day, because it was the beginning of an incredible journey I would have with the horse to take me to Dubai, to ride for Bob Baffert, and just to meet all the people in racing that I met. And it was just this beautiful introduction to California racing from Canada.
Can you talk about what it's like to be in really predominantly men's sport? I mean, do they welcome you, or do you have some people that give you a bad time?
I feel like at this space in my career, being predominantly male, and also I'm a minority. I'm white. I'm a female, and I race against predominantly Hispanic, Venezuelan, Portuguese, and Spanish. So there's a cultural dynamic, and I feel like at the beginning when I first got here, I did need to stand my ground with one of the jockeys in the jocks room, and we did have a toe-to-toe fight, and it was more of a very loud conversation, and security was going to come in, and the clerk of sales said, no, let them talk this out. And we did, and it's been fine ever since. And that was the second week I was there, and then it's been great. Like, everything's been fine. I think in your life, people will test you, and I would say I would rather make friends out on the racetrack, because you're going to need somebody to let you out, especially on a big day. When you make enemies, that you're going to get in a situation where people aren't going to help you out or let you out. So I'd rather make friends, but of course you're going to bump into somebody here and there. And at that point, I think I need to stand my ground. Now I would say I'd rather keep my mouth shut and just walk away, and sometimes hear a guy out, but let the dust settle and come back when the conversation's not so hot. It's like, when you're driving a car and someone cuts you off, it gets hot and exciting, but it's good to let people cool off.
Do you have other female jockeys that you can talk to?
I do. I have a young girl, Erica, and she's not racing right now. She's been bad spills, and she kind of maybe needs a little bit of a break. It can mess with your heart, your head. So she's there, and we talk a lot, and I always want to, every room that I'm in with the girls, I always say to the girls, it's important that we support each other, because the better we can do, the better it is that they'll want to ride women. If we all suck, they're not going to ride us. If we're all doing well, then there's no problem. They'll ride a girl or a woman. So it's very important we support each other. The guys help themselves out, so why wouldn't we help ourselves? And I think it's really important for me in my career. I like when women get along. There's no reason why we should be jealous or, not proud of each other when the other person wins, because you can't win all the time, and you got to be happy still.
Can you talk about the racing circuit? What is that like, and how long is it?
The racing circuit, you have California, you have New York, and then you have Kentucky, and then Florida. So each circuit, you have to move around. Santa Anita has Del Mar, so you're moving all the time. You definitely are, we live like a gypsy or carnival people, we've been told. And you're always moving, and you think you have a stable life, but it's not. It's crazy. And what I love now is I'm in Florida at Gulfstream, and now this track runs all year round. I don't have to move. We run. There's a winter meet, but it's still the same track. We have a turf course, a dirt course, and a synthetic tapeta course. So it's like the best scenario. I don't have to live like a carnival person anymore. I get to live in one spot and actually have a life with stability. And I'm very happy here. It's a little hot in the summer, but I'm getting used to it. And I would prefer that than the cold or, like really cold rain or snow. So it's fine with me. I'm fine sweating it out a little bit rather than freezing. So I'm happy here. But those are the circuits, and those everywhere else, you got to move. You got to move every 3-4 months.
I think that, one thing that I do think is interesting is how has horse racing changed since you started? Are there more women these days?
Sadly, there's not that many more women. There are. It's not a huge following, and but there are more girls coming up in Europe and seems to be like Australia. There are some more women here in the United States, but it's not like a lot by any means. And so I don't know exactly why that is, but I definitely enjoy doing it, and I do love the handicapping side of it. I'd like to do my own show once a week and tell you my picks and why I pick certain horses and how I even go on the track, and I'll watch a horse breathe and then I'll follow that horse because they have saddle towels, and I'll follow it back to its barn and ask if I can ride the horse. I did that a month ago, and the horse just ran third first time out, a little filly that I saw. And I can tell you, when they come to the paddock, how they're handling the stress level, and if they are a favorite, and if they're over sweating or something I don't like, I'd say throw it out and do something else.
Can you talk about how much longer do you want to go, and what's next? What's next for you?
Well, I mean, I'd love to ride 5 more years. It just really depends on how fit and healthy I keep my body. Right now, I feel amazing, and I love it, and I'm super happy. I think when I'd like to, and as I'm riding, I'm always studying breeding, and I know that I can see and I have an eye for a horse, and I love, the sales and just, I can tell you, like, I write notes of every horse I ride, the breeding, how they act. And when I get to that point where I get to go to the sales and look at horses and maybe buy for owners, friends, syndicates, I can also refer back to all the years that I've ridden, how those horses from those, bloodlines, how they acted. Like Candy Ride is a great sire, but my experience with Candy Rides is they're a little cuckoo, a little crazy. So not always, but it would be not my favorite choice. And then, if you're looking at a horse and their conformation, and if you love their breeding and you love everything that you'd want, I would love to get into the bloodstock part of it. And I also love real estate and interior design. So I got options, but I would love just to ride right now.
Can you tell me the 2 best horses you've ever ridden on, and what's the difference between the 2 of them?
Probably Game on Dude is the most successful horse, and I had the most success with him. And I think I don't think I've had my second best horse yet.
Yeah, we would. We would do a scouting report on everything. Our players, coaches, everything you do a scouting report on. So that's really cool to hear that you guys are doing the same stuff that we're doing. Well, Chantal, thank you so much for being on. Um, we got to somehow get down to Florida so we can ride some horses. We can do a little boxing. We can play some golf. We can just get it all done down there. Thank you so much for being on. This was awesome.
Yeah, I would love to play golf. Thank you so much, too. Thanks for having me.